At 9,000 meters, both engines died. Flight 847 was falling from the sky. The pilots had no power. No options. Then F-22 fighter jets heard a voice on the emergency radio. A legendary military call sign. But that voice belonged to a 12-year-old girl in seat 14C. What happened next shocked the world. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The sun was shining bright over Denver International Airport on a Tuesday morning. Passengers were lining up to board Flight 847 to Seattle. It looked like any normal flight. Business people with laptops. Families going on vacation. Elderly couples holding hands. Among them walked a young girl. She was 12 years old with reddish-brown hair tied back in a ponytail. She wore simple jeans, white sneakers, and a gray hoodie. On her back was a purple backpack covered with patches from different national parks she had visited. To everyone who saw her, she was just another kid traveling alone. The gate agent, a friendly woman named Susan, personally walked her to the plane. "Okay, sweetie, you have seat 14C. That's a window seat. The flight attendants will take good care of you during the flight. Do you have everything you need?" The girl smiled politely. "Yes ma'am, thank you. What's your name, honey?" "Emma. I'm going to visit my grandmother in Seattle." Susan smiled and patted her shoulder. "Have a wonderful trip, Emma." Emma lifted her purple backpack into the overhead bin and sat down in her window seat. She pulled out her tablet and opened up her homework. Math problems. History reading. Just a normal student doing normal schoolwork. The flight attendant, Patricia, stopped at row 14. She had been working for the airline for 20 years and had seen thousands of kids traveling alone. "Hi there. I'm Patricia. What's your name?" "Emma, ma'am." "Well Emma, if you need anything during the flight, just press this button right here, okay?" "Thank you, ma'am. I will." Patricia smiled and moved on. Nice kid. Polite. Nothing unusual. The businessman in seat 14B barely looked at Emma. He opened his laptop and started working on spreadsheets. The elderly couple across the aisle smiled at her warmly, then went back to their card game. Nobody knew. Nobody suspected. Nobody could have imagined what Emma was carrying in her backpack. Hidden beneath her homework and snacks was a small wooden plaque. On it was engraved a single word, Phoenix. The Phoenix call sign wasn't just a name. It was a legend in military aviation. Emma's great-grandfather had earned it first. He flew P-51 Mustang fighters over Germany in World War II. He survived 89 combat missions when most pilots didn't make it past 20. Then Emma's grandfather carried the Phoenix call sign. He flew F-4 Phantom jets in Vietnam. He saved his entire squadron during an ambush by flying directly into enemy fire to draw them away. Emma's mother was the third Phoenix. She became an F-16 instructor pilot in the Air Force. She taught hundreds of new pilots how to survive in combat. Many of them said she saved their lives with her training. But how did a 12-year-old girl get a military call sign? 2 years earlier, Emma was at an air show with her mother. She was only 10 years old. A vintage World War II plane was doing a demonstration flight when something went terribly wrong. The engine exploded. The regular pilot was knocked unconscious. The backup pilot, a young Air Force officer, took control but was badly hurt. Blood was running down his face. He couldn't see properly. He was panicking. The plane was spinning out of control. It was going to crash into the crowd. Hundreds of people would die. While adults were screaming and running, little Emma grabbed an emergency radio from an unmanned booth. She had grown up around military pilots. She had listened to radio communications her whole life. She knew what to do. "Pilot, this is ground control. Can you hear me?" Her voice was calm. Steady. Like she had done this 1,000 times. The injured pilot heard her. Yes. I can't see. I don't know what to do. Listen to my voice. Follow my instructions exactly. Pull the stick back slowly. Count to 3. 1. 2. 3. Now level the wings. For the next 4 minutes, 10-year-old Emma talked that pilot through emergency procedures. She told him how to regain control. How to reduce speed. How to line up for an emergency landing. You're doing great. You can do this. Just keep listening to me. The plane landed hard but safe. The pilot survived. Nobody in the crowd was hurt. Air Force generals who were at the air show couldn't believe what they had witnessed. They reviewed the radio recordings. They interviewed Emma. They tested her knowledge. 1 month later, at a formal military ceremony, Emma received something no child had ever received before. The Phoenix call sign. Not just as an honorary title, but as a real, official military recognition. The generals said she had saved lives through courage and knowledge. She had honored her family's legacy. Fighter pilots from every branch of the military came to shake her hand. These were warriors who had flown combat missions. And they were honored to meet her. From that day on, Emma was Phoenix. Her call sign was registered in military databases. When any military pilot heard Phoenix, they knew exactly what it meant. But sitting in seat 14C on Flight 847, Emma looked like just another kid doing homework. Nobody knew they were sitting next to a legend. The Boeing 737 climbed smoothly into the blue sky. The captain announced they would be flying at 9,000 meters. Flight time to Seattle would be about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Patricia brought Emma some extra cookies with a wink. Don't tell the other passengers I gave you these. Emma smiled. Thank you, Patricia. Everything was normal. Peaceful. Boring, even. Then at exactly 9,000 meters, the first engine died. The plane shook violently. Passengers grabbed their armrests. Some people gasped. In the cockpit, Captain James Morrison's eyes went to the engine displays. Engine number 1 was completely dead. No power. No fuel flow. Nothing. Engine failure on number 1, he said calmly to his first officer, Sarah Chin. Sarah was already running through the emergency checklist. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. Captain Morrison tried to restart the engine. He followed every procedure perfectly. He had trained for this exact situation dozens of times. Nothing happened. 30 seconds passed. Then the second engine died. This time the whole plane lurched. The vibration was so strong that overhead bins rattled. Then everything went eerily quiet. Both engines were completely silent. The plane was now a glider. At 9,000 meters. With 147 passengers and 6 crew members on board. Captain Morrison's training took over. He radioed immediately. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is United Flight 847. We have total engine failure. Both engines are dead. We are at 9,000 meters, approximately 100 miles northeast of Denver. We have zero thrust. Requesting immediate emergency assistance. Sarah was doing rapid calculations. A Boeing 737 with no engines can glide for about 15 to 20 minutes from this altitude. Maybe 150 to 200 kilometers of distance. But they were over mountains. Finding a place to land would be almost impossible. Captain Morrison tried restarting both engines again. And again. And again. Nothing. They were falling from the sky. Slowly. Silently. But definitely falling. In the passenger cabin, people knew something was very wrong. The sudden silence after the vibrations was terrifying. Experienced travelers recognized this wasn't normal. The engines weren't making any sound at all. Some passengers started crying. Others grabbed their phones to send final messages to their families. The businessman in 14B closed his laptop with shaking hands. Patricia's voice came over the intercom, trying to sound calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We are experiencing some technical difficulties, but the pilots are working to resolve the situation." But Patricia's hands were shaking as she moved through the cabin. She had been flying for 20 years. She knew what dual-engine failure meant. This was the nightmare scenario that every flight attendant feared but never expected to actually face. She stopped at row 14 to check on Emma. The poor child must be terrified. But when Patricia looked at Emma, she saw something unexpected. Emma wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was looking out the window with a calm, focused expression. Like she was assessing the situation. "Emma, honey," Patricia said gently, kneeling in the aisle. "We're having some problems with the plane, but everything will be okay. I need you to stay calm and follow any instructions we give you." Emma turned to look at Patricia. Her eyes were clear and steady. "Both engines failed," Emma said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Patricia felt her breath catch. How did this child know that? Before she could respond, Captain Morrison's voice came over the PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. I need to be honest with you. We have experienced a complete failure of both engines. We are currently gliding while we attempt to restart them. We have declared an emergency. Air traffic control is helping us find the nearest safe landing location. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for a possible emergency landing." The announcement caused exactly what Morrison feared. People started screaming. A woman in the back was sobbing loudly. A man was praying out loud. Children were crying. The plane was descending at about 500 meters per minute. Slow enough that it didn't feel like a crash. But fast enough that they only had about 18 minutes before they would hit the ground. Miles away and thousands of meters above, two F-22 Raptor fighter jets were on a routine patrol. These weren't ordinary planes. They were the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world. And the pilots flying them were among the best in the Air Force. Major Alex Rodriguez, call sign Razor, was leading the patrol. His wingman was Captain Jennifer Martinez, call sign Viper. They were cruising smoothly over Colorado when the emergency call came through their radio. "All aircraft, be advised. United Flight 847 has declared Mayday. Dual engine failure. Aircraft is gliding at flight level 300. Location approximately 100 miles northeast of Denver." Rodriguez felt his stomach drop. Dual engine failure was extremely rare. Almost impossible in modern aircraft. When both engines died, survival rates were terrifyingly low. Martinez's voice came through the radio, professional but tense. "Razor, did you hear that? Dual engine failure?" "I heard it, Viper. We need to get there now." Rodriguez and Martinez immediately changed course. "Control, this is Razor. We are close to that position. Requesting permission to intercept and provide assistance." "Permission granted, Razor. Proceed to intercept." The two F-22s turned and accelerated. Their powerful engines pushed them forward at incredible speed. Within minutes, they could see the Boeing 737 on their radar. Rodriguez had flown combat missions over hostile territory. He had faced enemy fighters and surface-to-air missiles. But something about this emergency hit him differently. This was a civilian airliner full of innocent people. Families. Children. People who had just wanted to get from one city to another. And there was nothing he could do to save them. His F-22 was loaded with weapons and advanced technology, but none of it could restart a dead engine or carry a falling plane to safety. "Viper, we can only watch and coordinate," he said quietly over the radio. "We can't save them ourselves." "I know, Razor," Martinez replied, her voice heavy. "But we can be there. We can help guide them. Sometimes that's enough." Rodriguez pulled up the flight information on his display. Flight 847. Boeing 737. 147 passengers. 6 crew. Then he saw something that made him freeze. One passenger had a notation next to their seat number. A military call sign designation. Seat 14C, Phoenix. "Viper, are you seeing this?" Rodriguez said over the radio. "Phoenix?" Martinez responded, her voice showing shock. "That can't be right. The Phoenix call sign. From the air show incident. The manifest says passenger is 12 years old." Both pilots knew the story. Every military pilot knew the story. The 10-year-old girl who saved a pilot's life. Who earned a legendary 4-generation call sign. Who had become a symbol of courage in the aviation community. "Control, we need confirmation," Rodriguez said. "Is passenger Phoenix actually on board Flight 847? There was a pause while the controller checked multiple databases. "Razor, confirmation is positive. Passenger Emma Phoenix, age 12, traveling as unaccompanied minor. Call sign is verified and registered in military database." Rodriguez felt chills run down his spine. That legendary call sign was on a plane with both engines dead, gliding toward the mountains. Back in the cabin, Emma made a decision. She unbuckled her seatbelt and reached up to the overhead bin. She pulled down her purple backpack while Patricia was busy helping other panicked passengers. Emma unzipped a side pocket and pulled out a small black radio. It was a civilian aviation radio that her mother had given her for emergencies. "Emma," her mother had said when giving it to her, "this is not a toy. You only use this if lives are at stake. If you ever find yourself in a real emergency where your knowledge could help, then you use it. But only then. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mom. I understand." Emma turned on the radio and tuned it to 121.5 MHz. The international emergency frequency. Every aircraft would be monitoring this channel. She took a deep breath. Her hands were steady. She pressed the transmit button. "United 847 flight crew, this is passenger Phoenix in seat 14C. I have emergency aviation experience and tactical knowledge. I am monitoring this frequency if you need assistance." The transmission was short. Professional. Calm. In the cockpit of Flight 847, Captain Morrison and Sarah Chen both froze. Morrison's hand stopped mid-reach toward the restart controls. "Did you hear that?" he said. "A passenger calling themselves Phoenix?" Chen said. That voice sounded like a child. In the F-22s, Rodriguez and Martinez heard it too. "It's her," Martinez whispered. "Phoenix is active." Rodriguez keyed his radio. "Control, Phoenix has made contact with the emergency aircraft. The call sign is confirmed active." Emma's voice had been calm and clear. Professional. Like she had done this before. Captain Morrison made a quick decision. He had about 15 minutes to find a landing spot or everyone on board would die. If this passenger truly had emergency knowledge, he couldn't afford to ignore it. He keyed his radio. "Phoenix, this is United 847 Captain. Confirm you have emergency aviation expertise." Emma's response came immediately. "Captain, I am 4th-generation military aviation. I have emergency procedure knowledge. I can assist with glide optimization and coordination with your military escort." Sarah Chen pulled up the passenger manifest on her screen. Seat 14C. Emma Phoenix. Age 12. Unaccompanied minor. She looked at Morrison with wide eyes. Morrison nodded once. They were out of options anyway. Phoenix, we accept your assistance. Both engines are completely dead. All restart attempts have failed. We are descending through 8,500 meters at approximately 500 meters per minute. We need a landing location. Emma looked out her window at the mountains below. She had studied maps of this region with her mother. She knew the terrain. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She thought about her great-grandfather, flying his P-51 Mustang over Germany with enemy fighters all around him. He must have been terrified. But he never showed it. He stayed calm and did his job. She thought about her grandfather in Vietnam, drawing enemy fire away from his squadron. Putting himself in danger to save others. That's what Phoenix meant. Sacrifice for others. She thought about her mother, teaching young pilots how to survive. Emma, her mother had told her once, fear is normal. But you can't let it control you. You acknowledge it, then you focus on what needs to be done. That's how Phoenix rises. Emma acknowledged her fear now. Yes, she was scared. Yes, people might die. But she had knowledge that could help. And she wouldn't let fear stop her from using it. Captain, I recommend the dry lake bed 40 kilometers southeast of your current position. It's your best option. The surface should be firm enough for landing. In his F-22, Rodriguez was already pulling up maps. He found the lake bed Emma was talking about. United 847, this is Razor in the F-22 escort. Phoenix is correct. That lake bed is your best option within your glide range. Morrison turned the aircraft toward the coordinates. Phoenix, we're heading for the lake bed. How should we optimize our glide? Emma's voice came back steady and confident. Reduce speed to 190 knots. That's your best glide speed for this aircraft. Increase your angle of attack slightly to improve your lift-to-drag ratio. Minimize use of flight controls to reduce drag. Every word she said was correct. Textbook perfect. Rodriguez, listening from his F-22, was amazed. This 12-year-old was giving better tactical advice than some trained pilots. Morrison adjusted the aircraft's speed and angle exactly as Phoenix recommended. Immediately, he felt the glide performance improve. They were covering more horizontal distance for each meter of altitude lost. Phoenix, your recommendations are working. Please continue. Emma was completely focused now. This was what her whole life had prepared her for. For generations of Phoenix aviators speaking through her. Captain, use your remaining altitude to position for a straight approach to the lake bed. Don't circle or maneuver unnecessarily. Every turn wastes energy. The F-22 escorts can guide you to the optimal approach path. Rodriguez immediately coordinated. United 847, will guide you in. Follow our vectors. The elderly couple in row 13 had stopped their card game. They were staring at Emma in shock. This child was on the radio talking to the pilots like a professional. The businessman in 14B had completely forgotten about his work. He was listening to every word Emma said, his mouth hanging open. Patricia stood frozen in the aisle, tears running down her face. She couldn't believe what she was witnessing. Emma continued giving guidance as the plane descended. Captain, at 2,000 meters you'll need to deploy landing gear. That will increase your drag and descent rate, so time it carefully. Make sure you have enough altitude to reach the lake bed after gear deployment. Understood, Phoenix. The minutes ticked by. The lake bed was visible now through the windows. It looked tiny from this height. A pale oval against the brown mountains. Emma keyed her radio again. Razor and Viper, can you coordinate emergency response at the landing site? Already done, Phoenix, Rodriguez responded. Rescue helicopters and emergency crews are on their way. Emma's voice carried a hint of emotion for the first time. Thank you. At 2,000 meters, Captain Morrison deployed the landing gear. The plane shuddered as the wheels came down and the drag increased dramatically. Gear down, Morrison announced. The descent rate increased. The lake bed was rushing up fast now. Emma made her final transmission. Captain, remember to flare gently. Touch down with minimum vertical speed. The surface may be soft. Keep the wings level and maintain directional control. Be ready for immediate evacuation after landing. Morrison's hands tightened on the controls. Roger that, Phoenix. And thank you. The final 60 seconds felt like an eternity. Inside the cabin, passengers were in brace positions. Some were praying. Others were crying silently. A mother held her young son close, whispering that everything would be okay. The businessman in 14B looked at Emma one last time. This child had tried to save them all. Whether it worked or not, she had tried. That took more courage than he had ever shown in his entire life. Patricia gripped her seat, thinking about her own children waiting at home. She prayed she would see them again. Morrison pulled back gently on the controls, flaring the aircraft to reduce the descent rate. The lake bed filled the entire windscreen now. It looked rough. Uneven. This was going to hurt. Here we go, he muttered. Sarah called out altitude. 500 feet. 400, 300. 200, 100. Emma closed her eyes and whispered, please let everyone be okay. The main landing gear touched the surface with a hard jolt. Not catastrophic, but rough. Much rougher than any normal landing. The plane bounced. Someone screamed. Overhead bins rattled violently. Morrison fought to keep the wings level as the plane bounced and shook. The nose gear slammed down hard. For a terrifying second, Morrison thought it might collapse. But it held. The plane skidded across the lake bed, throwing up huge clouds of dust and sand. The soft surface grabbed at the wheels, slowing them down faster than any brakes could. Inside the cabin, people were thrown forward against their seatbelts. The deceleration was violent but not deadly. Flight 847 rolled for about 800 meters before finally coming to a complete stop. Silence. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Morrison's voice came over the PA system, shaking with emotion. We're down. We're safe. Everyone evacuate now. The cabin erupted. People were crying, laughing, screaming with relief. They were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. Sarah was already triggering the evacuation alarm. Morrison keyed the PA system. Everyone evacuate immediately. Use all emergency exits. Get away from the aircraft quickly. The evacuation was perfect. Flight attendants had trained for this their entire careers. Emergency slides deployed. Passengers streamed out and ran across the dusty lake bed. Patricia found Emma as soon as she got out. She grabbed the girl and hugged her so tight Emma could barely breathe. You saved us, Patricia sobbed. You saved every single person. Emma hugged her back, feeling all the fear and stress finally hitting her. Her legs felt shaky. Her hands started to tremble. All 147 passengers and 6 crew members stood on the lake bed, alive and safe. Above them, the 2 F-22s made a low pass. Rodriguez and Martinez had watched the entire landing from above. They had seen the plane touch down hard, bounce, and skid to a stop. They had held their breath the entire time. When they saw people evacuating safely, walking away from the aircraft, Rodriguez felt tears in his eyes. He had been a fighter pilot for 15 years. He had seen death and destruction. But this moment, seeing all those people alive because of courage and skill and a 12-year-old girl's inherited wisdom, this hit him harder than any combat mission ever had. "Viper," he said over the radio, his voice thick with emotion. "We just witnessed something extraordinary." "I know, Razor. I know." Then something extraordinary happened. Rodriguez and Martinez, flying in perfect formation, both rolled their aircraft in a traditional military salute. This gesture was usually reserved for fallen warriors or the highest military honors. They were saluting a 12-year-old girl. As they rolled their jets, both pilots thought about what Phoenix meant. Not just a call sign. Not just a family legacy. But a symbol of rising from impossible situations. Of courage when everything seemed lost. Of knowledge passed down through generations. Rodriguez keyed his radio on the military frequency. "Control, United 847 is safely on the ground. All souls survived. Phoenix performed magnificently. That call sign has never been more deserved. Request permission to render honors." The controller's voice came back, breaking with emotion. "Permission granted, Razor. And tell Phoenix, tell her the entire Air Force is proud." On the ground, Emma looked up at the F-22s as they completed their salute and flew away. She finally let herself cry. Not from fear. But from overwhelming relief and emotion. She had done it. She had honored the Phoenix call sign. Captain Morrison walked through the crowd of evacuated passengers. He was looking for one person. He found Emma standing with Patricia, both of them crying. Morrison approached and extended his hand formally. "Phoenix, I'm Captain Morrison. I want to thank you personally. Your knowledge and guidance saved every life on this aircraft. I will make sure this goes into my official report." Emma shook his hand, meeting his eyes directly. "Captain, you and Sarah deserve all the credit. You flew that plane perfectly. I just helped with some calculations." Morrison shook his head. "No. You did much more than that. You kept us calm. You gave us confidence. You reminded us that we had support." The businessman from 14B walked over hesitantly. I sat next to you for an hour and a half. I thought you were just a kid doing homework. I'm sorry I underestimated you." Emma smiled through her tears. "It's okay. Most people do." Rescue helicopters arrived within 20 minutes. Emergency crews checked everyone for injuries. Miraculously, there were only minor bumps and bruises. Not a single serious injury. The news media arrived within hours. The story spread like wildfire. 12-year-old girl helps save entire flight after dual-engine failure. Phoenix rises, young aviation genius guides plane to safety. Military call sign holder saves 147 lives. Emma's face was on every news channel. Her story was shared millions of times on social media. The military aviation community responded with overwhelming pride. Air Force generals issued statements praising Emma's actions. Fighter squadrons around the country held ceremonies honoring Phoenix. Rodriguez and Martinez gave interviews about their role in the rescue. Hearing that call sign, knowing what it represented, and then hearing Phoenix perform with such professionalism, Rodriguez said, "It was one of the most incredible experiences of my career." Emma's mother flew to meet her immediately. When they finally reunited, they held each other for a long time without speaking. Her mother understood completely what Emma had experienced. The weight of responsibility. The fear of failing. The relief of success. "You honored the call sign, Emma," her mother whispered. "All 4 generations would be so proud." The official investigation into the crash took 6 months. Investigators found that a rare manufacturing defect had caused both engines to fail simultaneously. It was a 1 in a million combination of circumstances. The final report stated clearly, "The survival of all 153 souls aboard Flight 847 was due to the exceptional skill of the flight crew, the coordination of military escort aircraft, and the expert assistance provided by passenger Emma Phoenix, age 12, who utilized inherited aviation knowledge to optimize glide performance and landing site selection. It was the first time in aviation history that a child passenger had been officially recognized in an accident investigation report for providing expert assistance during an emergency. The report concluded, the Phoenix call sign has once again lived up to its legendary status. Rodriguez and Martinez requested permission to visit Emma. They wanted to meet her in person. The meeting took place at the Air Force Base where Emma's mother was stationed. When the two elite F-22 pilots walked into the room and saw Emma standing there in jeans and a t-shirt, they felt strange. This young girl had the voice of the professional they had heard on the radio. They shook her hand formally. "Phoenix," Rodriguez said, "Viper and I wanted to tell you in person. Flying escort during your emergency was one of the most meaningful experiences of our careers. You honored that call sign and reminded all of us why we serve." Emma smiled, but her eyes were wet with tears. "Thank you for being there. For trusting me. For the salute." Later, standing with her mother and watching the two F-22s take off, Emma finally allowed herself to cry. Her mother held her close. "You understand now, don't you?" her mother said quietly. "What it means to carry the Phoenix call sign." Emma nodded. "Rising when it's needed. Finding courage when everything seems impossible." Exactly. The passengers from Flight 847 stayed in touch with Emma for years. Patricia visited several times, always bringing cookies. The businessman from 14B wrote her a letter apologizing for judging her by her age and thanking her for the lesson in humility. Captain Morrison nominated Emma for the Civilian Medal of Bravery. She received it at a ceremony attended by hundreds of pilots. Emma went back to school. Back to homework and friends and normal life. But she was never again just another kid. She had proven that the Phoenix call sign was more than just a family tradition. It was a living symbol of courage, competence, and the refusal to give up when lives were at stake. Years later, when Emma would eventually pursue her own career in military aviation, she would look back on that day at 9,000 meters as the moment she truly understood her destiny. The moment when engines failed and death seemed certain. The moment when a legendary call sign rose from the ashes once again. The moment when a 12-year-old girl with a purple backpack showed the world that courage has no age limit. The F-22 pilots who heard a kid's call sign and witnessed Phoenix rise would tell the story for the rest of their careers. And every time they told it, they would end the same way. At 9,000 meters, when both engines died, we heard a voice that shouldn't have been possible. A child with the knowledge of generations. A legend that saved 153 lives. That's the day we learned that the Phoenix call sign wasn't just a name. It was a promise. And that promise was kept by a 12-year-old girl who refused to let anyone die on her watch. Emma Phoenix did all of that and more. She showed the world what it means to be truly legendary.